afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles. I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, is going to be joining us in just a little bit to talk about a couple different topics this afternoon. But first, as always, let's go ahead and take a look at what's trending across the border, starting with nearly 44% of the 16,000 truck driving programs in the United States may be forced to close. The Department of Transportation found the companies may not be complying with government requirements. The DOT said it plans to revoke the certification of nearly 3,000 schools unless they can comply with training requirements in the next 30 days. The targeted schools must notify students that their certification is in jeopardy. Another 4,500 schools are being warned that they may face a similar action. Separately, the Department of Homeland Security is auditing trucking firms owned by immigrants to verify their drivers are qualified to hold a commercial license. Moving on, TSA has announced that U.S. air travelers without a real ID will face a $45 fee starting in February. The real ID has been required since May, but passengers without it have been allowed to clear security with extra screening. Homeland Security says 94% of passengers are already compliant. The new fee aims to encourage travelers to obtain a real ID, which requires more documentation than regular IDs. The fee is non-refundable and doesn't guarantee verification. Other accepted IDs include passports and military IDs. TSA also accepts digital IDs through platforms like Apple Wallet at participating airports. President Trump convened his cabinet this morning amid controversy over Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's role in authorizing a Caribbean strike that killed 2 survivors of an initial hit on their boat. Hegseth has faced pressure after reports that he said quote-unquote, kill everybody when ordering a follow-up strike on an alleged drug smuggling vessel in the Caribbean, killing survivors that were hanging on to the wreckage. He said, quote, as I've said, and I will say again, we've only just begun striking narco folks and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. Hegseth said that during today's cabinet meeting. The wave of strikes on alleged narco-terrorists is raising alarm inside the military and dividing GOP lawmakers. Also happening, President Donald Trump pardoned former Honduras President Juan Orlando Hernandez, and he has been released from a U.S. prison. The U.S. Bureau of Prisons has confirmed that Hernandez was released from a penitentiary in West Virginia on Monday. He was sentenced last year to 45 years for aiding drug traffickers. His wife thanked President Trump for the pardon, saying it ends nearly 4 years of hardship. Hernandez was arrested in 2022 at U.S. request and convicted in New York. Trump said he believed Hernandez was set up and that Hondurans had asked for his release. And that is a look at what's trending across the border. But stay with us, because when we come back, Sandra Sanchez is going to join us live right here next. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. And welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Before we bring in our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, in just a moment, I have a couple more headlines to talk about. They kind of lead in to exactly what we're going to be talking about today, starting with border czar Tom Homan is planning a visit to the University of Texas, El Paso on Thursday. The El Paso County Republican Party confirmed Homan's visit is a, quote, important conversation our community needs right now, end quote. But Democratic Congresswoman Veronica Escobar said she is disappointed and alarmed by Homan's visit. Escobar said Homan's visit shows an alarming embrace of right-wing politics by UTEP. The event is hosted by Turning Point USA at UTEP. It's a student group affiliated with the organization founded by the late Charlie Kirk. Escobar said that Homan has been one of the chief architects of the Trump administration's quote-unquote cruel hardline mask mass deportation tactics. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said that she recommended a full travel ban to President Trump during a Monday meeting, but she didn't say which countries. On the social platform X last night, she wrote, quote, "I just met with the president. I am recommending a full travel ban on every country that's been flooding our nation with killers, leeches, and entitlement junkies. Our forefathers built this nation on blood, sweat, and the unyielding love of freedom. Not for foreign invaders to slaughter our heroes, suck dry our hard-earned tax dollars, or snatch the benefits owed to Americans," end quote. She continued on to say, "We don't want them, not one." Now, while Noem did not say which countries her proposed ban would target, the White House has placed at least partial restrictions on 19 countries. The Department of Homeland Security said the full list of countries impacted by Noem's recommendation will be revealed soon, and the White House also deferred to DHS for comment. And now is the time to bring in our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, to kind of expand on this for a little bit. Sandra?
Right, Rudy. Well, as you know, over Thanksgiving, President Trump announced a complete travel ban on 12 countries. He issued a proclamation, and then he issued a partial travel ban on 7 countries. I think we have a list of the 12 that we can pull up. Yeah, this is the reason. That's the proclamation he made. Here is the list of full restrictions. And, you know, some of the reasons he gave were suspected terrorists like the Taliban in Afghanistan and state-sponsored terrorism in Iran. He says Burma had a visa overstay rate of nearly 2/3 the number of visas issued. Chad's visa overstay rate was 50%, while Equatorial Guinea overstay rate was about 90%. So the Trump administration is saying we need to clamp down on these countries that are listed here. You know, they said there's not enough vettings by several governments that are issuing these visas. Eritrea, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen were among those listed in the proclamation that he's saying they don't trust this setup that those countries have, and they believe that it could be allowing people to come into the United States that could do harm to people here. Now, in the partial, and as well, he said in Haiti had just too many people coming in. Now, in the partial list here, we have 7 countries listed, among them Cuba. And partial restrictions mean more vetting. Some people could be admitted. The process could take longer. It's uncertain. It depends on the person. It depends on how much they have to research. But they're saying that, you know, for instance, Cuba is a, quote, state sponsor of terrorism, and its government doesn't cooperate with the United States. And regarding Venezuela, it says that they don't vet people well and that they won't take back their own people. We know that there have been issues, as we've talked about, regarding what the United States has done to boats in the Caribbean off the coast of Venezuela, and Venezuela is on this list. So we have 19 countries that we know about, and so I spoke to Reichlin-Melnick. He is a senior fellow for the American Immigration Council in Washington, D.C., to ask him, what does this travel ban mean? What does it mean for people seeking asylum, people wanting to come here going forward, people trying to come to the United States? So we're going to play the interview that I recently had with him.
Well, right now, we actually don't know that much about what the Trump administration is doing because a lot of their press releases haven't come with details to follow. What we know is that the Trump administration has suspended processing all asylum applications that are pending at U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. These are asylum applications filed by people who are not in the immigration court system, people who are not immediately facing deportation. In addition, the Trump administration has said that it is going to expand vetting of people who come from one of the 19 travel ban countries, which includes countries like Cuba and Venezuela and Haiti. Those people who are applying for benefits inside the United States, such as green cards, will now face new potential denials because they come from those countries, although the government assures people that simply being from one of those countries is not in and of itself a reason to have your application denied. Then on top of that, the Trump administration is also suspending all immigration and visa requests for Afghan nationals so that they can supposedly put more vetting measures in place. And they have said that they are going to review over 500,000 green cards, over 200,000 refugee applications, and for people who entered the United States during the Biden administration or got certain legal status during the Biden administration. Now, what that review looks like, we don't know yet.
So let's break it down. You mentioned Haitians, and Haitians had been part of the temporary protected status, and that was taken away. Now they're actually not even allowed to come and apply at all. At the same time, there has been an extension of the refugee asylum applications for those from South Africa and the Afrikaners so it seems like you mentioned Venezuelans, Cubans, Haitians, Afghanistans, people of color. And yet we see an increase in the number of refugees who are allowed to apply from the Afrikaners, which are typically white people. I mean, what is this signaling?
Yeah, so I want to, make a brief correction there, because when we look at Haitian TPS and temporary protected status for Venezuelans it has been terminated. For Haitians, that termination was initially blocked in court and is now set to expire in February of next year. But crucially, Haitians and Venezuelans and others can still apply for benefits. The Trump admin has not banned them from getting benefits, but it is suggesting that it may deny some of those applications solely because of the country they come from. But how that's going to work out yet doesn't know. But the broader point is a good one. We are seeing, especially with the refugee program, the Trump administration say hundreds of thousands of refugees who entered under Biden are inherently suspicious because they think the Biden admin may not have applied appropriate vetting standards and rushed applications through the process. But this administration has completely revamped the refugee program to apply to essentially only white people from South Africa and Europe who are conservatives, which really goes far beyond the refugee definition. And so you do have the world's greatest refugee program. It's been in place for 45 years that is essentially being replaced with an immigration program only for white people. And it is very notable that the admin is doing that while now also talking about third world countries and remigration and various other buzzwords that do indicate that they appear to be judging people based on where they come from.
Another buzzword is denaturalization, something we've never heard, right? You got naturalized and you were a citizen. Now, what does this mean, denaturalization? I mean, it was virtually unheard of. I mean, it certainly could have occurred in the past, but, circumstances, I guess if you committed a very bad crime, there were certain circumstances that you could lose your naturalization, but they're considering this for larger groups of people now?
Well, so denaturalization has been part of U.S. law for a very long time. But until now, it's been limited to very narrow circumstances, and specifically to people who committed fraud to get their citizenship. So people who were not eligible for citizenship, but committed immigration fraud and got their citizenship that way. It is basically only in that circumstance, or if people commit treason, that you can lose your citizenship. Beyond that, naturalized citizens are treated identically to U.S. citizens. And the Trump administration, in its first term, as well as now in its second term, has talked a big game about denaturalization, about trying to target people who are U.S. citizens. But I think it's important for people not to worry too much, because despite everything that they are saying, the actual process of stripping someone from their citizenship is very difficult for the federal government to do, and with good reason, because citizenship is such a powerful part of who you are and what rights and protections that you get that the government cannot willy-nilly take it away. So it is possible the Trump administration will assign more federal prosecutors to make efforts to strip people of their citizenship, but every denaturalization case requires going in front of a federal judge and proving in court that that person committed fraud, and that is a lengthy and time-consuming process that means they cannot do it to large groups of people all at one time. They have to do it one person after another, and it takes time, energy, and resources. So I don't see that as a major tactic that the Trump administration will use.
Do you think the administration is just throwing this word out there as a scare tactic?
We have seen this administration often talk about things that never end up actually happening. For example, President Trump said about over a week ago that he was immediately ending temporary protected status for Somalia. That hasn't happened. In fact, there isn't anything that would permit the president to suddenly terminate temporary protected status for Somalia. And a week later, there's no indication the Department of Homeland Security is doing anything more than waiting until March when it's set to expire anyway. So we have seen this administration threaten denaturalization in the past. In Trump's first term, the Trump administration stood up something they called Operation Yanis. And Operation Yanis was aimed at denaturalization. And the result was, after 4 years, that they increased the number of denaturalization cases by about maybe 50 to 100 per year, which is very significant for those people, but it didn't have a broader impact on the 25 million people who are naturalized U.S. citizens.
Some of the latest actions that happened on Thanksgiving with this so-called third world ban is your organization and others considering lawsuits or taking it to court to stop these actions?
I think right now we are waiting to see what is rhetoric and what is action. Because it's one thing for the Trump administration to say that they're going to do all of these things, and it's another for them to actually take those steps.
Obviously, it was triggered with a shooting of 2 National Guardsmen, which is a terrible crime, incident to have happened. Of course, is these types of actions in response too much?
I think the first thing that's important to say anytime we talk about a situation like this is that this was a tragedy. Sarah Beckstrom, the National Guard's woman who was killed, appears to have been a wonderful person who had a full life ahead of her. And I believe the other National Guardsman who was shot is still pulling through in the hospital, and we're hoping that he manages to survive. But the actions of this gunman are ones that should be reviewed in the actions of what that person did, and not what tens of thousands of other people who have no relationship to this man other than having been born in the same country had to do with it. When we actually look at the situation, it would appear this man was vetted. He worked for the U.S. government for over a decade in Afghanistan. He worked for the CIA, involved in top secret missions, which required constant vetting. Before he came to the United States in 2021, he was vetted. In 2025, when the Trump administration granted him asylum, he was vetted. And all reports so far really do indicate that he was going through a mental health crisis, and his actions may have been the result of that, not some nefarious plot. This is why it is so important for politicians and policymakers to take a deep breath before reflexively changing policies or demonizing entire groups until we have all the facts on the ground. And right now, as the facts come in, this doesn't appear to be a vetting failure. This does appear to be more likely to be a mental health incident.
And Sandra, going back to what you kind of ended there with with Aaron, the attack that happened that kind of spurred this move by the president and the White House. What can you tell us about that attack now?
Yeah, the 29-year-old Afghan national Reichlin-Melnick, and I've just said that really wrong. My apologies there. Has been formally charged with murder in this case. He's accused of shooting 2 West Virginia National Guard members, as you know. He appeared before a judge remotely from his hospital bed today, and he is recovering from gunshot wounds himself. He suffered when another National Guard member shot him, and he was charged with 1 count of murder, 2 counts of assault with intent to kill, and 1 count of possession of a firearm during a crime of violence. Yeah,
and I think it's something very important that Aaron actually mentioned there about the vetting process. We've been seeing in the media the reports of the White House, this administration, talking about how this was a failure on the Biden administration, but there was another round of vetting on this individual earlier this year under the Trump administration as well. So I do think it's important to note that for the folks at home that may be watching or listening to us in podcast form, that this seems to be not so much a vetting failure, but if there was a vetting issue, this happened under essentially 2 administrations going forward. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, it's we see these partial restrictions on some of these countries. It almost seems like the administration was kind of waiting for an excuse to throw these other countries, because if this is individuals from Afghanistan, maybe you throw Iran, Libya into the mix there on those full restrictions. But, has you heard anything about the other countries that may not be necessarily, the countries we think of when we think of, foreign terrorist organizations?
Well, yeah, and Kristi Noem's tweet is very telling. We're going to restrict every person from every damn country. She said that's been flooding our nation with killers. I thought it was really interesting when I interviewed Mr. Reichlin-Melnick, that he said did not really appear worried. Normally, Aaron is the first to sound the alarm. He kept using the term rhetoric. He was very calm about it. There haven't been any lawsuits filed yet. I think he believes the system is going to work, and we'll see. He gave Somalia as an example. Yeah. We'll see, what happens. But this recent tweet by Kristi Noem indicates more countries could be coming. Maybe there's a timeline that will be associated with that, and if there is, we will let you know.
Yeah, I thought the Somalia point was very interesting. I believe it was Somalia, right? That he said that there had been threats by the president, or the president said immediately ceasing those protections, but again, letting it kind of run the course and kind of feeding that to the base to kind of show that something is or might be happening or in the works there. So.
Right, and there's no question that the individual who has been charged, as Aaron said. There are mental health issues clearly that are connected to this. There were other circumstances, and the question is why penalize an entire group of population because of one person. So we will see. We know that USCIS is not taking applications from anyone from Afghanistan right now, but we'll see what happens with the other countries on this list. So far, there are 18 other countries, and sounds like Noem is going to add more.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting today, Sandra. We appreciate it. South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez reporting for us today. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles. Along the Tijuana River Valley in San Diego is a small commune of growers who grow onions, broccoli, and other produce to sell at local farmers markets. But they worry their proximity to the Tijuana River could become an environmental disaster if flooding were to strike. Salvador Rivera has their story.
The Tijuana River Valley Community Garden has been here for about 23 years. Average people grow fruits, vegetables, flowers, but up until a few months ago, the future of the garden and the growers was in doubt. The site sits along Hollister Street in the heart of the Tijuana River Valley. It's more than 200 individual plots of land owned by the County of San Diego, but managed by an independent contractor.
It's kind of a hidden gem.
Ed Whited is one of the growers here. This time of the year, he has already planted broccoli, green peas, cabbage, and cauliflower. He pays a fee of $1,600 a year plus water for a quarter acre. Others have smaller plots and pay less to harvest items such as blackberries, apples, and avocados. We ran into Whited as he was in the process of planting onions.
They'll be ready springtime, early summer.
Up until recently, the future of Whited onions were in jeopardy as he and his neighbors received eviction notices.
The Greater San Diego Resource Conservation District, who managed this area for the county for years, decided they were no longer going to renew the contract with the County of San Diego.
But 2 months ago, a new contractor stepped in, saving the community garden.
We were really worried that we were going to be evicted. It looks like we're going to be here for a while.
One lingering concern for growers like Whited is having to be next door to the heavily polluted Tijuana River.
Our worst problem here is the flooding. If the plant is touched with water, or potentially touched with water, it's no longer edible, and it's a complete loss.
Whited sells his crops to small stores and farmers markets. But after 30 years in the Navy, he is happy just to break even.
Just getting out here and working in the soil is really building your body and your mind. And that's what happens for me. It keeps me off the couch here.
That's not to say he doesn't take a break every now and then. Salvador Rivera, Border Report.
Thank you, Salvador, for the reporting on that. Just a really quick reminder that maybe you missed this edition of Border Report Live. Well, there's no need to worry because you can now catch us on your commute home while out walking the dog or maybe getting in a workout at the gym as Border Report Live now comes to you in podcast form. You can find us at Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio app, Spotify, as well as both audio and video versions on YouTube. Well, that's going to do it for us today. My name is Rudy Mireles. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you all next time.